let's do practice with the state. And let's say, for example, we want to have a button in our application here that when you click, it will add a new item to your list, okay? And if you're thinking about the structure of our current simple application, that means our button should be somewhere here, and that will trigger the set to do's because we want to update this list so we can see the new item here. Okay, so definitely we'll not be adding a button here and changing the state here because that's related to one item only and not to the whole list. To do's component, and let's add up our button, just under our list. So it's really just basic native HTML button, and to have an event called onClick. And you can see here it's not the same as HTML, you just have click and everything is lowercase. Here in React you use camel case namings for the properties. So the C is capital on click. Then the function, okay, you can define whatever you want to do right here and write whatever code the function will do for you. But I don't like this way of writing the functions. So I like to declare them and use them. Let's call it handle add item, and I have to define now this function. So I'll come just after my state, so it's still inside my function component, and let's declare my new handler function, and this will be an arrow function, which is in our case now doesn't take any arguments for it. Okay, so what we want to do, first let me close this button, say add new item. So what I want to do when I click this button, I want to add a new list here. So as I said before, I will not be creating a form, anything that will be in a later chapter of this course. For now, I'll just hard code the item, okay? So basically what you want to do, add new item, which means we need to update our state, okay? Which means you need to call the setup function for this state itself, okay? So let's trigger our set to do's. And what we will do inside the set to do's, first we want to do set whatever previous state we have, we want to keep it, okay? So array again of previous to do's, okay, comma, which is this one, right? Whatever previous to do's, we are destructuring them our array, means we want to keep them. Then add the new item, which should be again object. And for now, I'll just hard code. So I'll just copy an item from here, and I'll paste it right there. Okay, and let's click save, and I have some errors here, which means I'm just missing some curly brackets. I'll remove these, and there we go. So all what we're doing at the moment is that when we click, we are setting the state with whatever previous state is there and adding a new item here, okay? And previous one we had 4 items, so now we're adding 5th one, so I'm adding ID as 5. I can add here a title, let's say subscribe to this channel, as I know many people that are watching on this video, they are not subscribed, so please make sure you subscribe to this channel to get updated with all latest tutorials regarding the front end and even future AI tutorials as well. So in title, subscribe to the channel, it's not completed, and that's it. So let's save it, and let's go back to our UI. There is our new button now, so if I click, I can see my new item getting added there. So my functions is working properly. Let's do some profiling as well, okay? I will inspect, I will hard reload, I want to start from fresh, and I want to go to profiling. So I want to see that when I add my new item, by some logic, you'll realize, or no, you'll expect that your parent component, which is to-dos, okay, it should re-render because you're adding a new element to your state, okay? And also I'm expecting this element to not re-render behind the scene because I didn't actually update the properties of these items. I didn't go and change the actual data within here, okay? I just added a new one to it. And I'm expected for this one, of course, to re-render because it will be first time. Now, let's start recording. I click add new item, and I'll stop recording. And let's see our profiler. So let's go down, down, down. Let's click here. So that's my to-dos, okay? So that's my component here, okay? So that is re-rendering. And if you see the why this rendered, because hook number 1 changed, which is correct. This is the hook number 1 in my list. It has changed. Now, the other thing I can see is that all the children have re-rendered as well, okay? It's not only the item I added, but also the other children's, okay? And when I hover, it says, because the parent component re-rendered, That's why these children also re-rendered. Okay, somehow it makes sense, but in most of the scenarios you don't want that to happen. Okay, so how you can stop this from happening? There is something in React which is called Memo, okay, which is a hook, and that Memo helps you or helps your components to do a shallow comparison. Okay, so what we'll do, let me close this header components and go to our to-do item. So what we'll do, it will compare, shallow compare the previous properties to the current one. If it finds these properties are different, then it does the re-rendering again for you. If they are the same, it will prevent it from re-rendering. Okay, this is a basic understand of it. You can look at in depth in my channel for a full video about actually how this memo work. Okay, now in the future versions of React, that will be a built-in functionality for you. You don't have to add this wrapper memo at all. But as always, it's always too good to know all the concepts and all the scenarios, because even if the new versions of React have this functionality built in, which is still not yet actually released, it's still in the beta version. When you join in existing companies, you'll see this code there, right? And you have to know really why it is there, okay? Like until now, I still in some projects when I join, I can still they're using, the old versions, which is still using class components, which they really should have disappeared like almost 3, 4 years ago, but they are still out there. And if you don't have understanding, you'll not know how to refactor them, okay? So let's now use the memo and see how this can help us to prevent this wasted rendering we have now. So it's very simple. I can go and import memo from React, okay? And then here I have some extra thing here, I'll remove it. So in your export default, I will wrap my function name with a memo, okay? Simple as that. There are deeper usage, but I will not do in this course because this is a full beginner course. So this is very enough to start with. So I'll click save, okay? And now I will go back to my UI. I'll hard refresh and then clean up my console. And let's profile again with this change. Click start, add new item, stop profiling. And let's look at our profiler now. Let's open this. There we go. So that's our to-do component, okay? The to-dos one. And you can see the previous one didn't re-render behind the scene, okay? Which is what is I'm expecting now. So you can see here you have index, it routed memo, and it's grayed out. So this is really amazing. And you may think, okay, this is nothing, these components are tiny, they don't take time. But in real-time applications, in real-time scenarios, you will have so many small pieces of code, so many components in your application, and each one, if you just type, sometimes it will re-render so many other ones, okay? And those things can impact hugely on your application. Every small piece of change or small piece of performance issue can cause a lot of problem in your application. So if you build a habit of profiling while you're developing, your application will always be smooth, and also you to be able to help you to avoid some bugs that can turn out into a tech debt items in your application, which will be really difficult to solve in the future. So we are done with that. Let's move to the next topic. Now let's talk about side effects in React. So in React, side effects basically are operations that can affect something outside the scope of the function being executed, similar to updating your DOM or fetching data from an API or even logging to the console. So here usEffect hook in React comes very handy and help us to perform this side effect in function components. So let's see how we can use this usEffect in our application to fetch this data from an action API instead just hard coding our application. We will use the JSON placeholder again to access this list of APIs. So we have something here with slash to-dos, which give us the list of to-dos, okay? So that is the API endpoint we'll be using. Now let's come back to our components. So we'll be using a hook, as we said, from React, which is called usEffect. Okay, then we come inside our function components. If you remember the rules of the hooks, you only can call them inside your function components, okay? So after the state, okay, let's handle now side effects. And I'll come here, I'll call my usEffect hook. Again, the hooks are just functions again. And this hook accepts a first argument, which is a mandatory. It is an arrow function, okay? this arrow function, basically inside you can run whatever code you need to run to handle the side effect. The second argument is optional and depends of what you need, okay? And it's called array of dependencies. So what this array dependencies of it means? For example, now I give an empty array. It means that this use effect will only run the first time when my component mounted, okay? So I do not run any other time when my component re-enter behind the scene. To make it run behind the scene, for example, you want to listen to any prop change or any state change, you can add those properties or states here. So for example, I add to-dos here. That means this use effect will run every time my to-do state change, okay? If you have a property here and you want this use effect to run every time this property change, you can run that, you can pass this property name into the array of dependencies. The use effect in depth, I have a full tutorial on React Hooks course playlist in my channel, so feel free to check it out and learn React Hook in details. Okay, so in our scenario today, we only want to run this use effect the first time my component run because I want to fetch the list of data. Okay, now I will come here, I will try to access my API, so const response, okay, await to be async. So I'll use normal fetch JavaScript function to fetch the API, and I'll paste the endpoint. Okay. Now, as soon as I write await, it's complaining, and the reason why, because of course await you call it within an async function. Unfortunately, useEffect does not handle async calls directly, but there is an easy workaround, which is to declare a function inside your useEffect that you can use for triggering this API call. So I can come here, say const, I'll call my function fetch to-dos, okay, and to be an arrow function, and to be async arrow function. Okay, then I'll paste this lane inside my new function right there. Okay, now again I will just try to access the actual response JSON, so I'll say my to-dos equal await response dot JSON, and we got the data back now from our API, so what we'll do with it, we'll just keep it there? No, we want to set it in our state, okay? And don't use any more this dummy data here. So I'll remove this, I'll remove that, I'll give a default value to my state as an empty array in beginning, and when I get my data back, I'll say set to-dos to my new data, okay, which is coming from my API. Okay, now I declared my function, now I just need to trigger it and still inside my use effect. Okay, let's click save and let's visit our app. Let's close the console and there we go. So all this list is coming now from API instead of hard coding, okay? And that's where the use effect comes very handy. So fetching API details doesn't side effect your components. So you have to call it within your use effect, okay? Now some of you might be asking why we don't trigger this function from outside, okay? Why we don't declare it outside. We can, if you want to use this one somewhere else, you can do it. But if you're pretty sure that this function, you will not use it anywhere else, so there's no harm in keeping it inside your use effect as well, okay? So for me, I know for now, for this demo, I'm not using it anywhere, so I'm just keeping it inside. Now let's run our profile as well. Let's keep it a practice. And open our profiler, hard reload and profile, stop it, and let's open this one big wide. Okay, so our component will be down here somewhere, and that is our component there. That's our header, and this is our component. So the first comment, it says because the first time the component rendered, the second time it's nothing there rendered, it's just a comment. Third one, it's just a hard reload. Then you have the third, fourth one, so fourth of the five. So the fourth comment were actually all your components and re-rendering. Okay. Then the fifth one, which is now let's look at conditional rendering and how we can conditionally show some components and hide others and so on, just for a simple demonstration for our example today. So You remember we said add new item, we are not showing a form, it's just hard coding. Now let's actually show a form. So what I want to do is when I click add new item, I want to hide my list, show a simple form to add my new item, and with my new item added, then hide the form and show my list again with the new item. Okay, so first thing when you are thinking about this process is that when you click add new item button, we need to be able to know like how or when to show the form and when and how to show the list, which means we need some state that can track that for us and we can listen to. Okay, so let's define a new state, const, okay, and that will be a new state. So this new state, basically I need to declare the state name and also the setter function. So what I will say is, no, I'll say show form. Okay, that's my state and to be boolean, and I need a setter function for set show form, and the initial value will be false. Okay, so that's good there. Now what I want to do is, let me move this button first on the top. So what I want to do now, instead of hard coding, let me remove all this for now, just comment it. And what I want to do when I click my add button, okay, I want to switch the state value, okay, and I want to switch the state of the show form. So I'll say set show form to true. Okay, so now what we did, we click the button, so we are switching the state. The next thing is to listen to it and know when to show the list and when not to. Okay, so first let me create a new component that I will switch between. So I'll go inside my component folder, create a new file called to do item form. Okay, and I'll create a new file called index.jsx, and I will just create my component, which again is just a function. So we are just importing React and then we are declaring our component, and at the moment I'm just returning this. I'll just call it form goes here. Okay, we'll see later how to add the form. Now I just want to make sure my condition is working properly. Now I have my form. I'll just copy the name, rename, then go back to my to do. Okay, my to-dos. Now what I want to do, first import this component from my to-dos, my to-do item form. Okay, so what I will do here, I will say, okay, when I do curly bracket like this, I will say when show form is true. Okay, so when it is true, I want to display my new component. Otherwise, I want to show my list. So I'll cut this from here and put it there. And that's how you do, one of the ways actually that you do your conditional rendering of your components. Okay, so basically you do a curly bracket, then your condition, whatever condition you have, if it's true, question mark, if it's true, show the first option. If this condition is false, then show the second option. Okay, now let's try this. I'll just hard refresh. This is my list. Click add new item. Okay, my form goes here. Okay, later we'll see when we create the form and submit it how we can go back, but I'm happy with this. It is working as expected. We can also do profiling, like we said, we want to make it as a habit, and I'll start profiling, add new item, stop profiling, and again one comment, which is great. And it's only my to-dos component is re-rendering, and it says because hook number 2 this time has changed. Okay, and we said the hooks are in order, so this is hook 1 and this is hook 2. Okay, so it say hook number 2 has changed, which is true, because when I click add new item button, all what I'm doing is just setting this state to true. Okay, and you can see here, this is my new component, which is the form, which is now re-rendered. And when you say why this one re-rendered, it's because the first time the component had rendered. Okay, now let's create our first form, and it will be very basic form as this is a beginner course. Okay, we'll just give you some understanding how you can do some basic work with the forms. Okay, now let's do in the return function. So we'll be returning a native HTML form, simple as that. And inside our form, we just need one input field and we need one button as well. Okay, so let's add our input field, and that will be type of text and placeholder, enter to do title, and we will have also we need a handler. So whenever we type on this button, we need a handler to help us access that value. So it's called onChange, and I'll create a function for it. Okay, as I told you, I don't like inline functions at all. Um, and just from experience, it creates a lot of issues later, even performance issues too. So I will go and declare it inside my functional component. I will call const and my function name I create. And this one by default will take an argument, which is your element. And we can for now just cancel log this element. Okay, let's save and let's go to our console. So already I can see a few things there. So if I write s, you can see here's your element, okay? And you'll have something to target, and then you can access the value of it, okay? Now, there are a few things here when you work with forms. So first is that when you submit it, how you can access. So let's add also a button, and button will be type submit, okay? And I will say add my to do. So when you do type submit, that means it will trigger the default submission behavior of the form. That means I need to go to the form and add another property called onSubmit. Okay, and I'll create a function for it called handle submit, which means I need to declare it as well. So const, and I will just for now add a cancel log call submitted. Okay, now let's try a few things. I want first to see, I'll show you an issue which happens when you click the button. So when I click this button, it will hard refresh my browser, okay? Which is not expected. I don't want my browser to hard refresh or reload, okay? And one thing with your React application, if you do so, all the data you have in your states will be lost, okay? So one thing you always have to do when you're using the default or the built-in form in HTML, you need to add an extra code lane here, okay? So I'll add E, which is your form elements, and then how to say E dot prevent default. Okay, so I don't want any default behaviors for my form to be triggered. When I save that, I'll click add new item. Then when I click now this button, I should not see my form hard reloading, and also I should see my console. So add new item, but still it is hard reloading. And that's of course because of my spelling mistake, so it should be prevent default. I will save it, add new item, then click add my to do, and there we go. It didn't hard reload. I still can see my form and I can see my console here as well. Okay, now let's go to how we can access the details we write here. So when you're typing in your input field, that value is not accessible by anywhere in your React application, okay? So what you have to do is that you have to store it again in some state so you can access it whenever you need it. So what we'll do, we'll import a state here, again use state, and we'll create a state here, const, call it title or value or anything you want, and set title, and then use state, and it will start with an empty string in beginning, okay? It means empty, there is nothing. Then this title, I'll pass it as the value of my input field. So my input field should always read from my title, okay? Oops, title. And when I click handle on change, I need to set my state every time I type. So instead of cancel login now, I will say set title to e.target.value. Okay, so now all what I'm doing is that whenever I'm typing, I'm setting my state. Now let's go to our submission. So when I want to submit, I want to pass the value somewhere, right? Maybe you have an API call or anything, which I will not do now, but let's assume that. But all what I will do is just cancel log my title. Great. Now let's save all this and see if this is working or we are missing something. So I'll add let's subscribe and add my to-do. So there we go, submitted successfully, and I can see the value I'm getting from my state is same as the one I write there, which means it's working as expected. Now the next step is how we can then, when we click add my to-do, I want to switch my form, set the state again back to false, okay, and show my list again. Okay, now let's see how we can pass functions as properties for your child elements. Until now, we were just able to pass some values, like for example, objects. That's what we did until now. So let's see how we can pass a function. So we said here, when we click add my to-do, I want to be able to switch back to my list again, okay? Which means from my to-do item form, which is a child of my to-dos, I need to access a function, which is my setter function in my to-dos from a child component to change a state from the upper one, okay? So how we can do that, it's very simple and easy as well. So let's pass this setter function into my to-do item form. So call your property anything you like. I'll call it same, I'll keep them actually same. Okay, but this one you can call it anything you want, and this one is your actual set function from coming from your use state. Okay, now I need to add this property in my component. So I prefer again the structuring, so I don't write just props, but I'll write my actual property name right there. So whatever name you call it here, that's the name you'll add it right there. Okay, so what I want is that when my handle submit is successful, I want to switch from my form view to my list view. Okay, which means I need to set my show form state to false. So I'll just say false and click save. Okay, now let's hard reload and start this from beginning. So add new item, let's subscribe and add to my to-do, and there we go. So it's working as expected. Now the other problem we can see is that when we go back, we are not seeing our new item, and that's because we didn't do anything with it yet. Okay, now let's see the new thing we need to do. So let's add new item. Let's subscribe, add my to-do. So my form is switched, which is great, but I don't see my new items. So let's see how we can do that. So basically, logically is that we have a different component. That's where I'm setting the title value, right? So what I'm expecting is that when I close the form, my handle submits is triggered. I'm showing my state, I'm showing my list, so I'm hiding my form, and then I need to pass this value to our actual list of to-dos. Okay, I want to add this on the top. So we will do something similar to when we hard coded, but the steps are a little bit different because this time we are using a real-time data to add to our list. Okay, so first thing is that we need a way to pass data from down to up. Okay, so what I will do is that I will create a new function, const handle adding new item. Okay, and this handling new item, it should be an arrow function to accept one argument, which is new to do. Okay, let's now cancel log new to do, and this function I'll pass it as a property down to my to do item form. Okay, so I will say handle add. So this one call it anything you want again. But this new property for my to-do item form should point to this function here. Okay. And then we have to add this one in our child component. So let's add it to our prop. Handle add. So whatever name you do here, that's your property name which goes there. Okay. So what I will do is when I do submission, instead of cancel logging my item, I want to send it back up. Okay. So I will do handle add title, and I'll remove these cancel logs. I don't need them anymore. So now what we are doing, we are passing this one back up to our to-dos, and let's save and see if we're getting our cancel log now, okay, in our parent component. So let's add new item. Hi, and let's clean our console, add my to-do. I'm switching. There we go. I can see my console coming now from my actual to-dos component. So, and the lane 34, which is lane 34. Great. Now, what I want to do is that when I receive the new item, I want to set it in my state so I can see it in my UI. Okay, until now I can't see it here. So the way we did before, it's same thing. It just we have to add few more things like the ID and the completion because we don't set it from the form yet. So I will copy same this thing we did before, paste it there, and comment it. So all what we are doing is just we're setting the state again, okay, with the previous list we had, then we added a new item. Only difference, this title will not be hard coded, okay, it will be your new to do. And of course, because you added first time, your completed will be false, and I'm just adding a new ID 5. In other scenarios, you may have to use some ID generators in real-time applications. You can't hard code it like this. Or of course, if you're using an API call, you'll trigger an API, then you'll get back a response back with the actual ID. Okay, so I'll just click save, and then let's try again. I'll hard reload my application. And let's click add new item. Let's subscribe, add my to do, and there we go. I can see it now there rendering in my list. Now let's do a little bit about conditional rendering. So one thing you'll notice is that when I click add new item, you'll see that this one's still visible here. It should not be visible here, okay? So whenever my form is visible, I don't want that to be visible. So when we did this conditioning here, I want this one to be part of my to-dos, okay? So I'll remove it from here, and I'll write it right, put it right there. Let's save, and that's what's called refactoring. It's always, you know, you pick up the last pieces in the end. Let's hard reload. That's my add new item. I'll click it. Let's subscribe. Let's subscribe completion, and my new item is added right there. Okay, great. We are going so far so good. Okay, now let's go back to our to-do item component and let's see how we can clean up a little bit this function. So what I want to do now, this component, it's a function component which is using state, but I want to turn it into something called pure component, okay, or pure functions, which means that these components, they don't have any state handling or anything like that. All what they do is just render some piece of UI, okay? That's it, nothing more than that. So what I want to do is this states completion at the moment, it's just on this level, but it's not on the top level, okay? So whatever completion state, for example, for the first item, if I switch it, to be only switched within this level, okay? But my actual to-dos, this to-dos here, the value of completion of the first item will be still now false, okay? But in my local component, in the child component, it is true, okay? Which is not great. Usually your data have to be consistent, okay? So if I know this one is coming always from the parent, which is the source of the truth, should always hold the actual latest update of your data or whatever you can call it, okay? So what we want to do is, we don't want to do this handling of completion anymore from here, okay? So what I will do, I will remove all this, and is completed will not be there anymore. I will be reading just from my property, which is to do completed is completed. Okay, same here, to do is completed. And let's see if anything else I'm doing here. Okay, I'll keep the handle the on change function, okay, because I need that. Now what I want to do is I want to change actually the upper components, and again same thing we did before. We need to pass down a function that will help us. Maybe the first thing will come to your mind is passing to set to do's, okay, but if I've passed full to set to do's, still I need to do some handling and some, looping on and changing the values, okay, which I don't want to do that inside my child component. So what I will do, same thing we did here, I'll declare a new function, const, I'll say handle toggle completion of item, okay, and this should expect an item ID, okay, that's how I will know which item I should change the completion value, okay, so item ID, that will be your property. You can again call this anything you want, and for now you just console log my item ID. And what we have to do now, we have to pass this one down to our components, okay, so I will go to my to do item and I'll pass a new property. I'll just say toggle completion, okay, again call this property anything you want, but make it sure it's pointing to function that you declared right here, okay. Now I added new properties, so of course I have to add it in my child component that I'm passing to. So I'll go to my list of my props, I'll add it there, and I'll remove this use state here. I forgot to remove it, I was cleaning up. Now what I will do is that I'll say when I do on change, I want to trigger this function, okay? So I'll just declare here a new function called toggle, and this toggle is the one declared right there, okay, and all what I will do, I'll just declare, or I'll just trigger this function I'm passing as a property, and I'll pass my to do dot id, okay, if you remember it's expecting an ID, and I think that is the ID property name. Let me double check. Yes, so dot id, okay. Now let's see if our property is going back up. Let's save our page and I'll clean up my console and let's check these. So I think first thing here, these things are not working because the property is completed. Okay, let me fix this. It's not is completed, it's just completed. Okay, now it's working. Okay, now let's check if our value is going back up. So I'll untick this one, and there we go, it's coming as expected, but see it's not working yet because we didn't do anything. So what I will do now, I'll go back to my